Love is for those that have finished eating, right? Do you agree? Anyways, hi, welcome to Raving True Books. I'm Rovin, and today I'll be reviewing Tomorrow I Become a Woman by Aiwanose Odafen. So briefly, I'll be going through the characters of the book, and I'll first start with Uju. Uju is a young lady in the university, like that's when we meet her, and then she meets this really handsome pastor, and he singles her out of all the single ladies in church and asks her out. So it's like, okay. And then she realizes that there is more to him than meets the eye. So he's, as much as he's a charming person, his personality, as much as he's a charming person, his personality is very, it's just not right. It's just not right. Anyways, let's get into other characters. So we'll talk about the man. The man's name is Gozie. And Gozie is a pastor. He's charismatic. He's a very fine pastor, by the way. He's also very charismatic, and so people get to love what he says and how he says it. So people like to listen to him. Even Uju's mom. So when Uju's mom meets Gozie, she's utterly besotted by him, not in a romantic manner, by the way, but she just loves him because he reminds her of her brother. And that's a story for another day. Now, another character we'll discuss is Mama Uju. This is Uju's mom, as the title implies. And she had a brother she lost to the Biafran War. And because of this, she realized that the man Gozie, that with her daughter, reminds her a lot about his brother. So because of that, she feels like, well, this is a union made in heaven, this is a reunion, blah, blah, blah. And so even when Uju protests, she's hesitant to go on with the marriage, her mom is like, you know what, no, you can't move out of it. And so Uju she's boxed in. She's like, she has no choice but to stay and accept her mother's wishes. I'll briefly go through the main themes of the book. There is the theme of abuse, which is a theme that runs through the book. So before I started this review, I saw a clip of an interview for Aiwanose where she was describing the moment that birthed this book, and she said that every woman, probably most likely every woman, knows a lot of people who have gone through this kind of situation. And then she was hearing about it a lot, and she just heard one recently and it hit close to home. And she was like, you know what, I'm going to write about it. And her friend was like, write about it now, like just write about it. And then she did, and yes, and that's it. So it's very important that we have that at the back of our mind, because I think some people are like, this is fiction, and or they'll say that African literature is traumatic. And I just used to have a lot to say to this kind of people, because I'm like, they are mirroring your realities to you. They are saying that it is traumatic. The only way they can mirror your reality to you that it will not be traumatic is if they introduce satire. And the thing with satire is that it's not everybody that gets it. Some of you people just laugh and you forget that this is the issue on ground. So when we talk about issues like this, it's because they're important. So we see a woman going through abuse, and then we see how power plays. So at this time in Nigeria, a woman could not travel out of the country without her husband's permission. So you can see how much she had to depend on her husband. So it was like she had to make sure she was subject to her husband in every way possible, to have to please him so that she could get what she wanted. Imagine being a full-grown woman, you have children, and then they're saying, oh, you're not old enough to travel, but you're old enough to raise children because you haven't gotten a man's consent. Crazy, right? But that's the way it was. Another thing is how certain women seem to encourage patriarchal cultures that destroy women, and that is something I found against, because if we see this book, we see that yes, there was some form of resistance to the way Gozie treated Uju, but it encouraged these patriarchal cultures, even though it hurts women. And sometimes in cases like Mama Uju, they have even been direct victims of these kind of things, but they still go ahead to encourage it. And it's very crazy, because Mama Uju was a victim of domestic violence, so it was almost like it was making no sense why she was encouraging the situation where her daughter was under, where she was going through the same thing. And I don't know, maybe it was because of the way she was, like I said, I want to use the word besotted, because she almost made that man feel like he was a god in a way. And so whatever he said was law, despite how badly he treated the children and their mother. Also, I'll talk about war. So we see the imprint of the Biafran War in this book, how certain people make certain decisions because of that. For example, Mama Uju's entanglement with Uju's husband Gozie stems from the fact that she had a brother that reminded her of Gozie, so his aura, even some physical attributes did remind her of her brother. So whenever she saw him, it felt like she was meeting a version of her brother that survived the war. So it was easy for her to give him some leeways. And that's not the only impact. We see how people decide to make certain things, like we see a quote where it says that they make homes in their own home so that they have somewhere to return to when the war starts. So we see that the reason why Igbo people build a better place in the village is because they know that if a war springs out, that is where they're going back to. I did not know this. Like, I was always wondering what was the mindset behind this, but reading this book was what made it clear. Another thing I'll discuss is female friendships. So the backdrop of the story is that 3 women meet in a bus traveling to Lagos, and they become friends, and then their daughters, 3 daughters, also become friends. And it was a very beautiful thing. I really love reading beautiful female friendships, and it just does something for me. Another thing I'll talk about is how certain women attribute womanhood to your ability to conceive a child and bring it to term and give birth. I'd like to say that to be a woman is much more than being a production factory, like being able to make babies. There is more to being a woman than that. So if you are not able to do that, or if it is something that would come at a very huge risk to your health, you don't have to, like, and understand how important that feels like to you, how you have centered your life around the fact that you have to have children. But if you can't, there's nothing, like, it's fine, it's okay, and you should be able to sit with that and be comfortable to learn that it's okay for you not to have a child if your body says no. Your life is more important than that kind of desire. We see someone in the book who, despite warnings from doctors, despite her husband's resistance to the idea of her getting pregnant again because of what they know would happen to her, she still decides to go on it, and then we see the repercussions play out. And they play out, I think, even long after this book. We see some of the repercussions in the second part, the We Were Girls ones, and that's the book I'll be reviewing next. Anyways, that's all for today. Bye. See you in my next video.